Our town, our TV. Amherst City Cable.
Good evening. I'm Jennifer Vasilk, and welcome to the Community Voice. My special guest tonight is Mark Costilow, who's the owner of Amherst Cinema right here in town. Thank you for being on the show, Mark.
You're welcome.
You know, I am so glad you came because you've had some really cool movies lately. And I just wonder, how do you get your movies? Does somebody just say, okay, Amherst Cinema has to get these certain movies, or do you have a choice in them, or how does that happen?
And let me just, back to the beginning, it's my family and I. Cheryl's a big part of the movies.
That's your wife.
And my wife and my son Luke has been a big part, and Audrey is up there all the time. So it's a family effort with the movies. But back to the movie question and how, everybody thinks we just go to Drug Mart or one of the movie rental places, get a CD, we pay our $2, and we show it and make all this money, but it's not that way. Every Monday is my negotiating day. I used to call all over the country, all the different distributors, Disney, MGM, Fox. There's 20 of them. And every Monday I'd be trying to argue to get the best movie. Well, that got to be a lot of work, so what I've done now, I've hired a movie booker. Fran, she's one of the greatest ladies. She's in Cleveland area. Her company's Cooperative Theaters, and she books movies for a lot of companies. So now I just make one phone call. I only have to holler and yell at one person instead of a dozen every Monday. She calls, she gives me terms for movies. We pay a percentage of the gross, which is the ticket monies, and length of term. The newer the movie, the longer we have to keep it. So I have to make a decision first what type of movie, and as everybody knows, we're family-oriented, so it's usually a PG. G, once in a while, PG-13. So I look at my choices. I try to get them as they open. And it's the best deal and the best movie. And generally, the better the movie, the more you pay for it.
Well, what kind, you said you pay a percent of the gross. I mean, is it like 50%? Is it 75%?
That's really a funny question. It's different. Every Monday, again, it's negotiating. We have the tickets. That's how they know how many people come through your doors. Every day you tell them you start with ticket number 407.93, and then at the end of the day, you're 412.952 or something. And I don't even know if my math works, but I mean, you get the idea. Mm-hmm. But what happens is, I lost your question.
Okay, the percentage of the gross. How do they calculate the percentage?
Oh, okay.
Of the gross?
When we're negotiating, we talk about percentages. It could be anywhere from 35% up to 90%.
90%?
90%, but this is where it gets tricky. Sometimes they have a per cap for the area, which says I can't charge any less than, say, $5. So they might only charge me 70% sometimes, but it's on a $5 ticket. So that's, what's the math, $3.50 or something like that. Even though I'm only charging $4, they don't care. They charge what the per cap is. When I was only charging $3, there were times I was paying 90% of a $5 ticket. So every time somebody came through the door, I was losing $1. But you hope they buy popcorn and things like that. But it's all negotiating. The better the movie, the higher percentage, and depending on the movie company, 35 to 90%.
Wow.
The older the movie, and then like on a third or fourth week, it'll go down to 35. The earlier weeks, it's generally the higher percentage.
Because normally, I mean, you were kind of joking about going to Drug Mart and renting a video and showing it. You can't do that. I mean, your stuff comes out. I don't see your stuff in Drug Mart. I mean, it's
the new releases.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm typically showing them
stuff
as soon as Hollywood allows them to show them in movie theaters.
Yeah.
And even, back to the little DVDs. I mean, if you read that little warning on the DVDs, it tells you, this is for private viewing. It's not for audiences bigger than 12. I mean, there's a big legal.
Oh, is that right?
I mean, you're not supposed to show those to big groups, and if you're making money, that's definitely a no-no. You're getting that DVD to look at in your home with your family and a few friends.
Yeah, I know you can't fast forward through the FBI warning.
Right.
That's one of the things that it's built to play for it. So now you made a big change recently. You went to digital.
We did.
Tell us about that.
I wasn't a big fan of digital at first. It was for one, it was a lot of money. I mean, we're just small family owned. $60,000 to buy a projector that to the average person probably doesn't see the difference was big for me. But the problem was the movie companies save a ton of money first in distributing to the exhibitors like myself. Used to, they had to send a film. I mean, it was a 35mm film, 5 miles long on 6 or 7 reels, and those were around $2,000 a piece. So the first $2,000 through my theater, to them, was a wash. I mean, they made nothing. Now they send them out on these little hard drives. I mean, it's not a disc. It's a hard drive in a special format that's encoded, and they even send me a little code that I have to put into the computer. But these hard drives are like $50 and they're recyclable. So it's kind of it's a good thing for the environment and a good thing for the movie companies. But the upgrade was big for us. The picture is better than I expected. I really thought people wouldn't notice the difference, but now it's really like watching. Used to, you had little scratches, the Q dots, and a little fuzziness, you know, in different types of scene. The brightness wasn't as good, but now it's like watching a big screen TV 40 feet wide.
Kind of like high definition.
It really is the highest of high definition. I think ours is like, you know, like 1,000. I'm not a technical person, but typical TV is like 1,080 something. These go up like either double or like 5,000 pixels per whatever. I mean, they're 2 and 3 times more high definition than even high definition.
Wow. You talked about your family. This is a family-owned business, and I don't want to get away from that. What decided you and your family to get into this, and how long have you been working with the Amherst Cinema? How long have you been
we've
involved?
come up 1999. October 15th is when we took over, so the math, what's that, 15 years? 16? 15?
16, yeah.
I was coaching T-ball. My kids were that age. They were just little tiny things, and Mrs. Roseman, Tammy, was the owner of Amherst Cinema then, and her son was on my T-ball team. And I really didn't know she owned the theater, really, to be honest with you, but we went to a movie, I think it was Titanic, when the big Titanic was on. My wife and I went, and we saw Mrs. Roseman behind the concession counter. And we approached, we really weren't big moviegoers. I mean, maybe the 20 years we'd been married, we only been to half a dozen movies at most. So we went in, we saw Mrs. Roseman, we thought, hey, you know, maybe she could use some help. This would be kind of fun to just get involved a little bit. So I approached her, and she says, you know, Mark, she says, I really just don't enjoy this. Her husband had passed not too long before that. And she says, I really don't enjoy it a whole lot much more. There's a lot of maintenance needing done on the building. And she says, you know, if I could sell it, you know, I'd really get out from under this. Then really, it didn't click right away, but I had recently lost my job through a layoff. I was a second shift supervisor at Parker Hannafin. And just months before that, I had lost my position there. So my wife and I, we went home and we thought, you know, it'd be kind of fun. You know, maybe we should look into this a little bit. I knew nothing. I had never seen a projector. I didn't know it was on film. I didn't know anything about it. Didn't know distributors. But I said, I bet I could learn that. I know I could fix the broken toilets. I knew I could fix the roof. I knew I could do anything maintenance-wise where she would have had to contract those things out. So we approached her, and within a month, we had bought the place. She closed Thursday night. We opened Friday with the Blair Witch Project and the Iron Giant. We showed a double, and we don't do that anymore because those movies were old enough. They would let us share the screen. The newer movies, they make you show by themselves. But we worked all night long to clean up a little bit and orient ourselves, and I hired a consultant that came from Fremont. He laughed and laughed the whole night. I kept asking him what he was going to charge us, because he came like at 7 o'clock, worked through that movie that they showed, and he stayed from 9 o'clock, and this guy's like, he was 70 years old, and he worked till 7 o'clock the next day with me to learn and prepare this. And I kept asking, what are you going to charge us? What are you going to charge us? And he said, don't worry about it. We'll take care of it. And we'd spent, you know, I don't want to sound destitute at that point, but we'd spent pretty much our last dime buying this place. So I knew I couldn't afford a big consultant bill, and these guys are expensive. And at the end of the day, we started the Iron Giant was first because we showed the R-rated movie later in the day. I started it, and I was just so tired and so overwhelmed. The movie theater was packed. And I asked Smitty, was the guy's name. I said, so what, honestly, are you going to charge me? And he looked at me and laughed, and he was kind of a Santa Claus looking like fella. And he says, you know, Mark, he said, this is just great. He says, I cannot believe somebody with as little knowledge about the movie industry bought a place like this and actually has it open the first day he owns it, he says, I've got an industry story that's just everybody's going to love. I can't charge you anything. So that night was free on him, and we had a pretty long relationship, me buying parts and technical help from him.
Oh,
so that's
in a
the
way,
short
it paid
story.
off.
That's the short story long of us and Amherst, why we became Amherst Cinema. And it was a big family effort. I mean, my aunts and uncles came, my mom and dad came from out of town, my wife. I mean, we were all there just trying to prepare something we had no knowledge about, other than what Mrs. Roseman did show us, a little bit beforehand, but I wanted to learn more.
Showed you where the light switches were and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Mark, I really appreciate you coming in to talk about the Amherst Cinema. You are also the Safety Services Director for the City of Amherst, and I want you to promise me you're going to come back and talk about that.
I'll come back.
Okay.
And maybe I'll try to not be so long-winded with
no,
one single question.
Oh, no, that's wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. I look forward to having you come back. This is Jennifer Vasilk, and you've been watching The Community Voice. My special guest tonight has been the owner of our very own Amherst Cinema, Mark Costilow. Thank you, and good night. Good night.
There's a shelter pet who wants to meet you. Meet one today. Visit theshelterpetproject.org. Adopt.
Our town, our TV. Amherst City Cable.